Due to step down after the vote in a first, if it goes ahead, a democratic transition for the DRC. Well, we're joined via Skype from Lubumbashi by Aime Zonveni, editor of the Kinshasa Times. Aime, thank you for being with us. Firstly, just tell us what you've witnessed today in polling.
Well, I was able to witness the polls in the city of Lubumbashi, where I am based, and the observation that I was able to make was that the queues were very long in the polling stations that I visited, and also there were a number of concerns about the electronic voting machines. I was told that some were not working properly, some others did not have enough batteries to run for the day, and also people say that they had a hard time finding their names on the voters list that were put up at the various polling stations. So broadly speaking, there were some logistical challenges related to the electronic voting machines and also to the voting process itself.
Yeah. How widespread? We've heard of a lot of delays blamed on those voting machines.
It's practically nationwide, simply because as we were verging on the very final days of the election, before the elections, it was reported that only 60% of the electronic voting machines were deployed across the country. That's on one hand. And on the other hand, the places such as Kinshasa, which were initially meant to have 10,000 electronic voting machines, ended up having only 8,000, thereby reducing the number of available machines and consequently lengthening the queues of the voters at the various polling stations.
And where the machines weren't working, did you hear of them, that problem eventually being resolved and the machines starting to work? Because we know that at a lot of polling stations, they're trying to process the lines, they say.
Yeah, well, what was reported, and I will have to base my take on the preliminary findings of an electoral observer mission, which is called CIMOCEL. It is a domestic one. They were able to field a lot of observers, and their findings is that some of these machines were replaced. But then in order to do that, you just don't replace the machines like that, because this could create a loophole for potential rigging. So the observers say that this was not allowed. That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, well, people just had to wait until eventually, and luckily, some of the machines got up and running, which then resulted into the polls being delayed. And as I was leaving polling stations this evening, as the sun was setting in Lubumbashi, you could still see long queues of people at polling stations.
So there's still long queues right now, I'm sure.
As I left the polling station, that was 5 o'clock local time, I could still see a lot of people queuing and expecting to cast their ballots, which was after the deadline set by the Electoral Commission.
So we know more than 1 million people already can't vote, the Electoral Commission says, because of Ebola and unrest. From what you've heard, and remember, I know you don't have access to information from each and every polling station, but does it seem like there could have been widespread disenfranchisement today because of the voting machines?
Indeed, people were very unhappy, especially in Beni and in Butembo. These are two of the constituencies where the vote was rescheduled for March. Actually, people organized some sort of an unwarranted and not allowed vote in Beni and in Butembo. And in the constituency of Yumbi, which also saw its vote rescheduled for March due to violence prevailing there, they were not able to vote. And this is an estimated 1,200,000 people, meaning 3% of the electorate, that was not able to cast their ballots today. and they are said to be voting in March, even though the president-elect will be inaugurated in the month, finally, with the final results, will be inaugurated in January.
But the question is, just today, could millions more potentially not have voted because of voting machines, because of problems with the voters' roll that you cited as well?
Definitely so. I think it set aside more than 1 million people that couldn't cast their ballot because their votes were postponed. The logistical challenges and the voting machines itself will really affect the ability of many of the voters to cast their votes. So many won't be able, as we are closing the day, as actually the day has closed, many were not able to cast their ballots simply because either the machines did not work properly, or the machines were not available, or they could not find their names on the voters' registers.
What a pity. Final question, Aime. I guess heading forward, were there any reports of violence? There have been concerns of post-electoral violence, but any reports that unsettled you today?
No, the voting nationwide, based on the reports I have received from Kinshasa Times reporters in the major cities where they were deployed, we did not receive any reports of violence happening or potential violence happening. The day itself, you don't really see any violence happening or minor incidents happening. The violence tends to happen when the provisional results are announced. And in this case, for the presidential candidates, at least, they will be announced on the 6th of January. Maybe that's when you will see people trying to dispute and trying to start citing